Okay, great. So in our poll, 23% of you said yes, you do enlist volunteers in virtual opportunities. 22% of you said no. 12% are not quite sure, and 43% of you are thinking about it. So thanks so much for entering that information. It's helpful to me as we get going on this webinar. And for the 43% of you, almost half who are thinking about it, hopefully this is an opportunity to really give you enough features and thought about it to, I hope, move you towards actually using them in the next few weeks or months in the midst of this season we're in with the COVID-19 pandemic and then beyond that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a quick reminder, I know most of you know this, but Volunteer Florida is the governor's lead agency for volunteerism and national service in Florida. We're also the lead agency for volunteers and donations before, during, and after disasters, so certainly very busy right now. And our mission is to strengthen Florida's community through national service, fostering volunteerism, and leveraging resources. And we want to see Floridians engaged. So we certainly serve you all as our key audience through AmeriCorps, other national service programs, again through our work in emergency management, and then through trainings like this and through Volunteer Connect, which is our volunteer opportunities platform. All right, so I want to say to you all before we get going, just breathe. You all are incredible professionals. You do great work no matter what the occasion is, no matter what our season is in our societies, no matter what the climate is politically, religiously, racially, whatever is going on, you all provide such critical services and goods in our communities. So I hope, and I'll give you a slightly more calm, relaxed version of that. Here's breathe. But I hope that you all are taking good care of yourselves and that you are stepping back, recognizing, yes, everything is so important that you all do, but taking care of yourselves is most important. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I say that first. You all are such leaders, servant leaders in our communities, and we really just genuinely appreciate all the work that you all do. I want to make sure that you have all of the resources that you need, and I'm sure that you all do, but a couple of quick things. On our website, Volunteer Florida, Volunteer Connect's website, we have some information on COVID-19 through the Florida Department of Health that you can check in on. We also have guidelines for volunteers as well as for voluntary organizations, which would be all, if not some, if not all of you. So you can see here that we have quite a bit of information. This was created by the Florida Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster Group in collaboration with Volunteer Florida. The Florida Nonprofit Alliance also has some good information. So afterwards, I'm certainly going to provide as much information as I can to you all that hopefully will be helpful. I know you all are monitoring all of the news and you all have plenty of information that you need, but we also, as Volunteer Florida, want to be able to serve you in whatever way that we can. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rolling specifically on volunteerism and voluntary and virtual volunteerism. One more quick slide, you've got this. Hope that you all will stay positive and hopeful during this time. Okay, you all know this, but just as a reminder, volunteering is not a nice but unnecessary thing. In particular, times like these, people are aware of that, but we know that 365 days a year, this is the heartbeat of our communities. These are just a couple of the other ways that we can communicate to people in our volunteer opportunity recruitment posts, in our orientations, in our training, when we are conveying the impact of the work that we do. It is important, it's vital, it's invaluable, it's compelling, it's core to our communities. I always like to give people a little bit of a reminder to emphasize to people how core this work is. Doesn't matter how small the volunteer opportunity, that it's contributing to achieving the kinds of missions that you all have that are really just a core heartbeat for our communities, as I mentioned. A couple of the quick statistics. We know that there's a huge economic value to volunteering. We know that it is associated with a higher level of employment for people, and we know that it has those strong physical and mental health benefits. And this is the kind of information, if you need to, you can share with your volunteers, you can share as you recruit volunteers online. Right now there are a lot of businesses. Volunteer Match has done a survey. It was probably about a week ago, and corporations are more likely right now to want to commit to organizations. I believe it was both in donations and volunteerism. So this kind of information is great to share with them as you're able to hopefully draw them in during this time, and then into the future keep them as interested donors and as interested volunteers with employee programs and so on. So this language can be really helpful in that way. So it also strengthens our social connections, obviously really critical right now. Builds strong, safe, cohesive communities, enhances civic engagement, and delivers those public goods and services that so many people are really desperate for right now. So that was just a quick reminder of the language that we can use when we're talking about volunteerism, any type of volunteerism, on-site or virtual. Okay, so what are we discussing? There are a lot of different terms for this: virtual volunteering, micro-volunteering, remotely volunteering, online volunteering, crowdsourcing. My answer is yes. All of those things we'll be discussing this afternoon. This is something that's been around for decades, so it's not something that's new, but in the last several years, I think people are increasingly aware of it, particularly as the importance and the connectedness that we have to technology just skyrockets. Just real quickly, the term crowdsourcing is typically something that requires minimal or no vetting. This is something like, tell your friends to post this opportunity. That's a little micro-volunteering opportunity. That is a crowdsourcing opportunity. You are saying from people, hey, what do you think about this? Please do this for me. This is something like, hey, here's a survey. Really interested to know what you all think about XYZ. And then you send that out, people provide you with information. You did not need to ask for an application or people's skill set. So some of you have been participated in things like that. It could also be something you may have seen. Somebody says, we need the locations of a certain type of information. So we are trying to create a map of all of the places that people can get food right now for free, all of the sites. So people start submitting that information, and then you have populated this great resource or list for people. That's what crowdsourcing is. So just wanted to let you all know what that is, and that this is kind of the general area that we're talking about. And a lot of what we will discuss is similar to on-site volunteering. So keep that in mind. It's not as much of a mountain that a lot of people might think that it is to get those virtual opportunities going. Okay, so as I mentioned before, people are very interested in this. Look, this is a March 10th article on Idealist, which is a very popular site, especially for people who are, they do job searching there, they have career planning, all kinds of information. So you're going to see this more and more as we are in shelter in place and stay at home order kind of lifestyle and mode is really a great opportunity to think through this. If you see articles like this, read them, see what people are saying in kind of reputable, on reputable sites and magazine. Forbes has had a number of things, so in magazines, news. What are they saying about virtual volunteerism? Are you kind of in line with what they're saying? Certainly you don't have to follow all of that information, but if they're saying it's a meaningful, important part of what organizations do, are you just creating busy work for people because you just really want to get on the train of virtual volunteering? So be careful with things like that. It's great to monitor the landscape when it comes to what it means to have virtual volunteers in your organization. Okay, so how is this beneficial for volunteers? It's an additional, unique way to support the organization. Keep this in mind as we talk. This is existing volunteers as well as new volunteers. So an additional way, that would be for your existing on-site volunteers. It's service without leaving their homes. Obviously, that is a key thing right now. Now, notice this is circumstantial or because of preference. There are people kind of when we're in kind of a time that is the time that we were in prior to March, for example, when we had that mobility and ability to have those on-site volunteer opportunities easily, who don't prefer to leave their houses. So you already have a group of people who don't necessarily like to be in social gatherings, or for whatever the reason, their preference is not to be out of their home. So this does not have to do specifically with something like we're experiencing right now. An example of that is a service that someone may want to be able to contribute to their organization, but they're limited by disability. Maybe they don't have a car and public transportation is difficult for them. Maybe there's not a convenient on-site location. So the work that you do is really great, and you do it in a particular area, but someone can't get there. Some people love technology. Of course, they might love the specific opportunity that you have provided to them. That's also key, but some people love technology. I am not one of those people. I know enough to get by, but some people really enjoy being able to do this type of work. Okay, for organizations, it extends your resources. It removes those time and physical barriers. People can do something at 10 o'clock at night if they want to. They don't have to do it during your work hours. It is a modern, accommodating, and efficient way to enlist volunteers. You may get new groups of volunteers as a result of this, and it is environmentally friendly. And I just want to remind people as we're talking, because this can be a little confusing, especially if you're new to this, we are talking about people volunteering who are not on site. We are not talking about reaching people virtually for on-site volunteer opportunities, if that makes sense. And we're not saying using Facebook or Twitter in order to have people come and do work in person. So just to clarify on that. All right, I want you all to remember that this is a way to continue to connect to your existing volunteers. Keeping them in the loop is so important during this time. So for example, if you have an orientation that's already set up for volunteers, maybe ask your existing volunteers, do a quick survey for them that says, what do you think about our orientation? Were there any parts of it that were particularly beneficial? Any parts that you would prefer that we change? Or maybe this is a small set of your volunteers. And maybe you ask them about your training. Maybe you ask them about the ways that you've kept in touch with them. But some of the existing work you do, some of your existing policies and procedures, maybe you can get their opinion on that right now. And some of you might be thinking that people are overwhelmed and may not have an interest in these things. Remember that you don't necessarily know that. was just listening to an expert in the volunteer management field, and she was really emphasizing that until you ask, you don't know whether people are excited about the opportunity to serve and really looking for that, which we've seen, or whether people don't want to be bothered. And they'll let you know. We'll be honest about that. Okay, so your volunteer management functions stay the same when we talk about virtual volunteerism. We're going to talk first about that maximizing of impact, and then everything else that you see here on this chart, which I know you all are familiar with, all of those things are still realistic and necessary during this time. They just change stuff. They just change somewhat. So we're going to focus on the planning component and then a little bit on management. Okay, so this is what you all are saying to me. Give us example. And that's what we're going to do next. I am doubting that this is the type of computer that anybody has anymore. So I want you all to be thinking as I give you these examples, you think about people who are 65 and older, or you think about clients that you have who may be underserved, and you assume, as I just mentioned, that they don't have the resources. Don't assume that unless you absolutely know. There are people who easily can do something on their smartphone. They have a laptop. My laptop is 5 years old. It's great. Maybe I think actually 7 years old. Runs really well. So just remember that people are more connected to technology and more updated than you might think. So something that's real quick that I can give you an example of is this presentation. So I went to this website. It's called Unsplash, and it has free, really beautiful graphics. Let's say that you are revising that orientation for volunteers, or working on blog posts, and you really want to have pictures that aren't just maybe some of the pictures that you've had of volunteers. You want ones that are really relevant to the blog posts that you have. Somebody can go on here and do a search. So check this out. Don't give up. You are not alone. You matter. That's a beautiful one, and it's obviously a really quality photo. Here's what I did. And you see these pictures here, I looked up volunteer. Not everybody loves stock photos, but there are some, like the one that I just showed you, that are a little more personal. And these are free, as I mentioned before. They just like you to source and acknowledge the individual who took the picture. So just be thinking about that. There are quite a few other ones. So let me know if you have any interest in lists for graphics websites. There are several that are really beautiful. Yep, and you're going to get a few in the chat box. I want to introduce you all to Lizzie real quickly. She is the training coordinator for our AmeriCorps program for national service programs here at Volunteer Florida. She's fantastic in assisting me. And when I say that somebody that I don't know a whole lot about tech, Lizzie does. She is extraordinary. So she'll be throwing out a few things as we go along, and I'll also be providing these in a resource list. All right, let's get to our examples. The first thing that you want to think about with virtual volunteering are your big picture types of opportunities and areas. What kind of planning needs to be done in your organization? What planning do you need to do now? What planning do you need to do in the future, and how people can help you with that? What kind of reading? I know that sounds silly, but what kind of reading might need to be done? Okay, so this is something like you need help with creating more information in that training guide. You want to create more blog posts or want to share with your clients more information about a particular topic, and you need somebody to scan through, read information, and look for particular keywords, and so on. That could be something that really frees up time for you because you're able to do that. Okay, data analysis. And when we hear the word data processing or analysis, we think big time, we think CRMs, we think of all kinds of fancy things, Microsoft Access. Data analysis can be looking through an Excel spreadsheet. So think about whether there are things that you need to get through or other departments need to get through that people could help with. Okay, record keeping, research, as I mentioned before with the reading, tutoring or mentoring students or other people, okay? It doesn't have to be just students, and that's teaching. So think about teaching in the big picture, okay? Project management, any sort of analysis, whatever kind of advocacy your organization might be doing, administration, marketing, public relations, mobilization of your volunteers, of your staff, of your clients, of customers, and communication or maintaining relationships, okay? Those are the big picture thoughts that you can have, okay? Those are the categories that you can think about. Are there virtual opportunities within these? And then here are some specific ideas. Do you need information translated into Spanish, into Creole, into French? Something that people could do. Do you need someone to facilitate online discussions? Maybe it's with your existing volunteers. Maybe it's with clients. Maybe it's one for the general public because there's things that you want them to know, a Q&A about your organization, about some of the work that you do. You really want to get out the details about your mission during this time. Who's somebody who is technologically savvy or can just operate something very simply and either answer questions, so it's something like this, or it's a Zoom meeting. People can do that for you. They can edit or prep or tag photos for online use for you. They can find those photos, as I mentioned before. This sounds silly, but they can compose songs or they can write skits for you. We were just talking to one of our partners, a really fantastic organization in Miami, and they have a volunteer appreciation dinner coming up that they've had to cancel. And so we were workshopping what they could do to appreciate their volunteers. And some of the things that came up: compose a song, have it written to a particular tune. We honestly do that all the time for our trainings just to make things fun. You can do this and record it easily, okay? You could have one that's to the tune of Bye 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 by NSYNC, and then have another one that's to the tune of I Got You Babe or something like that. You could ask people which song do you want them to appreciate you to or something like that. You could write a little skit. You could joke about little inside jokes that you have about your staff, but make it a 30-minute presentation. You can have some mini slideshows there, intersperse that with the other videos. So that's something you could have a volunteer help you put together, or maybe they could write the lyrics because they're a really creative person. But that's the kind of thing you can do for appreciation, keeping existing volunteers connected. You could have somebody do that who is not one of your traditional volunteers. They can help you put that slideshow together and so on. Okay. They can critique or edit drafts for you if there's something that you're just starting. So maybe you're starting some new component of your web page and you want to be sure it works on Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, and Mac Safari. This is a great thing to do. We needed to do this about a year ago with Volunteer Connect, and so I just had some staff members and they quickly looked through to see whether or not the everything showed up on each site, and there were some bugs with that, and we knew that and were able to fix that. You may have things that are already posted and you posted them in a hurry and they really are not grammatically correct, the language isn't great, and you want to make sure that those are streamlined and they are quality and the best kind of wording that you could possibly have. So going back and editing through things that you may already have or things that you want to put out, having those drafts looked at can be really helpful. They can design graphics for you. They can do transcription. So you had a meeting and you've recorded it and you need that to be put down. I know that might seem unlikely for a lot of you, but some of you might be appropriate to have if it's a senior, maybe a senior volunteer, senior meaning somebody who's a veteran of your organization. They've been around for a while and they're trusted. Maybe they do a board meeting for you and take the minutes for that, something like that. They could develop a curriculum for you. If there's something that you are hoping to train people in, they could do that. Edit your press releases. There are a lot of grants that are coming out right now for nonprofits to help underserved populations and so on. Maybe there's somebody who can help you do that quickly and professionally. They could edit or create press releases for you. Same thing with websites. And they could manage other virtual volunteers for you. If you all have videos or podcasts, this is something that actually is very easy to do, the video part. There's so much software out there that it's free that people can use for this. And some people want to learn a new skill. So you say, listen, you may not be familiar with XYZ type of software, but we would love for you to use it and then have a copy of one of our videos or podcasts, play around with it and try and help us out with this. That could be really helpful for people who want to learn new skills. And then somebody could monitor news or monitor other blogs for you, again, with that keyword search, and provide to you the information that you're looking for. Many of you know it can be really exhausting to look through Google and weed out the things that are completely unhelpful for you. And so you've got people who may be willing to do that for you. Okay, maybe you start an advisory committee. And these are people who sort of think through the bigger picture of your organization. You know, it can be really helpful to have people who are kind of cold turkey coming in blind. They don't know much about your organization, but you want them to go through your website and you have a set of questions. Is it clear what our mission is? Is it clear what our population is that we serve, or that we serve the environment or animals or whatever the case is? Is it confusing? What would you like to see in terms of information? That could be something that you decide to have. It could be a committee who helps with planning. Again, somebody, for example, who is outside the organization, but is able to say, here's some things that I think that you all could do, or here's some things that I think would be beneficial to the population you serve. And maybe it's something that you can't do, but it could be a great suggestion for you. Okay, writing, not just editing, but writing blogs for you or opinion pieces to get your name and the word out there. Somebody who can provide staff emotional support. This doesn't have to be formal, but maybe that person looks up blogs or posts in that way to help them. Or maybe this is somebody, I'm a social worker and I have an MSW. Maybe you have somebody who is a volunteer who does that, who you ask if they can just listen. This is not a formal professional counseling session, and that's made known, and maybe there's some sort of electronic release of that or something. But you just have them call and check in with staff members, and then they provide blogs or articles or suggestions for that staff member so that they can continue to support, and it actually empowers the staff member after that phone call. Emotional support, wellness checks to your clients if that's needed. Administrative tasks, so checking in on donors to keep your donors in the loop. And they could research this technology solutions. And I'm going to actually provide you all with a list. Forbes has this running list of software that you can use for a variety of things. So that software for making videos, for staying connected to each other. They've got a list that they're adding to as they're able, and a lot of these have free versions for them. Okay, here's a big thing I want you all to think of. Copy and paste. when you're thinking about what ways you can mobilize virtual volunteers, when you think about the policies that you might need to have in place. So if somebody mentioned something about confidentiality, that one is a tricky one and may just not need to be something that you do virtually. But if you have partner organizations, a lot of education groups are doing mentoring and tutoring online, asking them about how they do that. If you already have confidentiality that's required, maybe that's something where you add in some information about electronics, phone, communications. You want to look at maybe through your IT director, which of those particular types of software minimize hacking and so on. You want to be sure your volunteers are only using the methods that you are giving them. And then the biggest thing is going to be speaking to your lawyer. We are really in unprecedented times, and even without the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic, this is something that is, you want to be very careful in these waters. So I would not give you any decisive information about that. It's really important for you to go to a lawyer about some of this information. But copy and paste. Now you want to make sure you vet it for whether it's relevant to your organization, but ideas about virtual volunteer opportunities, policies and procedures, again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel on this kind of thing. Okay, so going back to our volunteer management functions, that first part is the planning, right? It's thinking of the ideas. You want to be sure that it's something that's relevant for the volunteer as for your organization. And so we're going to go on to our next component, to our next section. All right. The vision of your organization. Remember I shared that about Volunteer Florida, the mission of your organization, the values of your organization, and your principles. These opportunities should line up with that. It is so important, as I mentioned, not to give people busy work. So if you just let them know that you want them to look up the word volunteer management because you'd like to know what types of teaching, what type of teaching is out there, what type of training is out there, because you want to grow as a volunteer leader and you have no intention of using that, don't ask someone to do that. If you want them to look up best practices on some particular type of information for your organization, but you have no intention of using it, please be careful and don't do that, okay? This should be valuable to the volunteer and align with these components of your organization, okay? It seems easy, but it's kind of easy to go into mission creep when you get excited. Here's an idea I saw online about how to use virtual volunteers, and then all of a sudden, you're not doing anything that's connected to your actual organization. So I'm going to go ahead and attach some information like that for you. I'm going to continue with these resources, providing them. And I'm sorry I don't have them in the handout section, but I'll make sure that those are on the resource page or that I get them to you in PDF as necessary. And then, of course, through all of this, the legalities of your choices in terms of volunteer opportunities that are virtual, and the ethics of what you're choosing. So right now, rules are changing. There's the CARES Act. You want to be careful with separation of employees and then substituting volunteers for employees. What are the ethics of that? Are there any legal issues with that? All of that you want to keep in mind. Sorry about that, there's a little bit of delay. Okay, so you want to assess your need. How can virtual volunteers move your organization toward its goals? And be specific. If nothing is popping up to you right now, that's okay. Sleep on it for a few days, maybe even a week or longer than that, things will pop into your head. Pull out that project list, things that you've not been able to get done. You can obviously think about right now in the pandemic and what you need accomplished, but this could be things that are not urgent, but they're important for your organization. So all those someday maybes, pull those out and think about them. Look again at what other staff members need. What would be really helpful for them. Give them a little definition of virtual volunteers, that it could be something real small or it could be a large project, and see what they have available, what types of projects they might have available. Okay. This is an on-site process as well. You know, who are your stakeholders? Obviously, it's your volunteers, it's your senior management, it's your staff. It's also those clients that you might have. It is your clients if you are working for an animal shelter or some organization that cares for animals. It's the people who take care of the animals, the staff or the current volunteers. It could be the people who own the animals. Who are those folks who, if you were to transition into virtual volunteerism, that would be impacted? Who should you get in your input from? Who needs to approve the implementation of this program? How big is it? You know, if you're really asking for detailed volunteer work, but if it's something real small, you really need to have a lot of details given to your supervisor about it. You have to put together some sort of detailed proposal. So make sure it's kind of commensurate with what you actually want to achieve. Who needs to approve it? Who is going to manage it? And being realistic about the resources. We're going to go into that in a second. And who do you need buy-in from? So which of those staff members, okay? This honestly might be an IT worker. You know, if you are the volunteer coordinator and you're the IT person and you're the CEO, you know, do you have the time and the energy to research those software options or not? Could you have a volunteer do that? You know, how much work is this going to take on the front side to figure out your avenues? And if your avenues are phone calls and emails, then you might be in good shape. You may want to think, though, are your emails, do they need to come from your agency? If so, are you going to need to set it at 2 or 3? You know, at Volunteer Florida, we have info@volunteerflorida.org. We have volunteer@volunteerflorida.org. We have personal email addresses. So you would want to think, you know, are things needing to come, you know, are messages needing to come from a particular type of email address? Do you need to be able to call people without the person's phone number coming up? There are services and software to do that so that when the person calls, the number doesn't show up for the other person, and that individual is not being called all the time on their personal phone, you know, things like that. And again, what are your goals for the volunteers? So think about what you want to achieve that's not just hours and number of volunteers. If you want X number of blog posts to be edited and you want this number of people to be checked on every week for a month, those are the kinds of outcomes you would like to think about. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but thinking about your policies and procedures and adding to them things that are connected to virtual volunteering. You may not be able to do all of this right now, but keep these types of things in mind. This is the structure. These are the things that you want to be processing. And so virtual volunteerism might not be something that happens immediately for you. I just want you all to know, if you have not noticed, in the background is one of those initial supercomputers, which took up like 10 by 10, room. And incidentally, don't worry, I won't take up too much time on random facts, but the computing power to send the first men to the moon was less than what we currently have in our smartphones. When I heard that, it blew me away. And I checked, it's actually true. Because I know the internet and you can have all kinds of fake information. Anyway, that's just the reality of the technology and the power that we have right now. So yes, these are the things you want to think about in terms of your policies and procedures. Not exciting, but you want to, these are just some categories that you want to process. How would you terminate a virtual volunteer? You would need to be able to shut down access to whatever information that they have. So processing that kind of thing is really important. All right. So again, here are some categories for you to think about. One, privacy, of course, for both the individual who is the volunteer and also the individual who may be served. Your privacy as well. Safety, of course, online is huge. Hacking can be a big issue that we want to be sure that people don't have to deal with. Boundaries online. I'm sure you all can immediately think about what could be an issue there. The hacking component, as I mentioned, and transparency. All things that you may want to think about when you are writing those policies and procedures and when you're crafting the opportunity. You also want to be sure either time that you are on either type of volunteering that you're getting feedback from volunteers and from staff. Okay, you may want to say something like, "This opportunity, it gives us drafts or perspective or great thoughts and ideas versus this is something we're definitely going to use." Because maybe somebody did a terrible job. This is the truth with on-site volunteering too, but you want to be sure that those expectations are clear and that you're not getting from staff frustration because they are not receiving the kind of outcome that they want, and the same thing from volunteers. You want to be sure that the software that's being used isn't too cumbersome and so on. So all kinds of types of feedback that you want to consider. And incidentally, you may want to have a virtual volunteer. We talked about teaching. Who teaches other volunteers how to use technology. There are people who are great at teaching information of any kind and can say, here are the steps to using Zoom and so on. So that's a really great role for a virtual volunteer. All right, so any questions that we might have? I'm just going to pause real quick and have a look. Okay, just double checking. I know we had a few about the software to make videos. That list will be provided to you all, and then the confidentiality, which I know is something that can be a big barrier. But more and more information is available online about this because virtual volunteering really is kind of blowing up right now as a great option for nonprofits. If there's anything that's reputable that I can provide to you all that doesn't get into legalities, I'll certainly do that. Yes, the recording of this webinar will absolutely be available afterwards. It takes a while to process. And I'm going to compile those resources, and I will get all of that information to you tomorrow, if not Monday morning, for everybody. And hello, Tom Lindley, fantastic person, great volunteer, and just a terrific human. Okay, and I'm sure all of you are. I just have known him for a long time. Just doing a quick shout out there. All right. So when you are advertising, and this is not a recruitment webinar, but here are a couple things you want to think about. Great title. Please avoid terms like assistant or aide. They are not helpful for people. The purpose of this position, okay? what is this doing to connect to your agency's mission? What's the impact of the work, right? This is, again, that core principle that this should not be busy work for people. Required and desired qualifications. This is that, we think about this a lot in our normal job descriptions or volunteer descriptions for on-site volunteers, Microsoft Excel, but we will teach you. Again, if you have those virtual volunteers who are willing to teach a couple of those skill sets, then the person doesn't necessarily need to have them. They just need to be very familiar with computers. The tasks and duties, of course, and any training that might be required. If you currently have an orientation or a training and it does not have a PowerPoint component to it, you may want to think about either videoing the right word? Filming, let's just use that term, filming yourself. You could do a webinar or a Zoom and just record yourself. You can just use the webcam on your computer. Most all computers have some sort of recording basic software on it or application on it. Saying hello, doing just a quick thank you for wanting to be trained. You can maybe have your CEO or some senior management do that, and then throw up those PowerPoint slides, explain them, and or do something like this. It could be recorded and you just provide it, or it could be live where you do this regularly, maybe once a week for the people who have an interest in virtual volunteering. All right, what are the deliverables? Screening and monitoring. Here's what we're going to do to just double check with you. A background check is going to be required. That typically is not the case with virtual opportunities unless you're doing something that's more confidential than that, which of course, that's up to you all and how you want to serve your community and achieve your mission and what might be necessary for that in terms of confidentiality. So legalities and the ethics and all of that. So make those decisions. And then monitoring. Are you expecting somebody to check in with you once a week? Are you going to check in with that person once a week? You want to be serious about the time commitment, the time frame, serious and realistic about this, okay? So if it's a huge project and you want it done by next Monday, this person, just because they have that flexibility of doing it in their pajamas at 10 at night, is it still really something they can get done by then? So be very realistic about that. The time commitment that you think it will take, I anticipate it will be 4 to 10 hours, that kind of thing. So those are important to put, to list. And this, we would love, of course, for you to use Volunteer Connect to share this information. More visibility, more volunteers. We know that there are other ways that you all are posting opportunities, and we think that yours would be a great one. That ours would be a great one, but others of you have one within your organization or know of others. So please use whatever you can to recruit. This could be on your website, but try to include some of these core types of information in your virtual volunteer opportunity position description. Okay, so I know this sounds silly, but before you do anything, make sure your own technology works. Okay. If you have listed a Facebook page and it is obsolete, delete it. Make sure your updated Facebook page is there. If you do not operate on Facebook anymore, and this kills me, and the last post you have is from 2016, you either need to delete that Facebook page or start updating it now. Same thing with Twitter, same thing with Instagram. And those, of course, are lovely things to have a virtual volunteer start for you. You can have some of those unsplash pictures. So, for example, you have that You Matter, Don't Give Up picture, and that's your first one, and you've got a great little caption. And then you post pictures of your volunteers. You post pictures of things that have happened in the past in your organization, how thankful you are for volunteers, and showing pictures of clients and so on. Maybe somebody creates that for you. But if you have it up, be sure that it's updated. Do your own due diligence. Your email addresses, your mailing address, your phone numbers, fax numbers, all of it. Just be sure if you're going to get a little more visibility that everything that you have is accurate. This is a funny picture about that 404 error, but we don't want that to be what people actually see. Okay. So just want to remind you all of Volunteer Connect, and this being a great way for you all to share your virtual volunteer opportunities. Recruitment is just such a core part of this. So what I mentioned before about the variety of different ways to provide the information about those virtual opportunities, just wanted to show you the beginnings of the site. We are going to get into something else, so bear with me, even though this is about Volunteer Connect. But those of you who use Volunteer Connect, I'm going to send you a link to one of the newsletters that we have, and it provides you with information about how to use our program area button, which specifically uses the word virtual volunteering. What we are going to be doing is having a link that says virtual opportunities, and that's going to be a listing of everybody who has actually used this virtual volunteering field when they're in their account on Volunteer Connect, and you all will all populate that specific link that will be on the site. So you'll get a link to this if you haven't registered for Volunteer Connect. I hope that you do, and that way you can be a part of this. The website that I showed you that, or the homepage that we have, you'll see that right under here, under volunteers, it's going to say find opportunities and find virtual opportunities. So we're going to try to put that in a variety of places so that people know specifically where to find virtual opportunities. All right, so one or two quick things about management. All right, so ongoing supervision and management, a really important part of this, as I mentioned before, checking in with them and them checking in with you in terms of virtual volunteers, whether it's a phone call, it's an email, it's them sending you the work that they've done, not in a turn this in, I'm your teacher sort of way, but hey, we want to make sure that we're on the same page and the same track. You know, you can say something like, it's a little bit harder because this is virtual, so we just want to make sure that we're connecting on this. We want to make sure your time is not being wasted and you maximize it. So here are the, here's the information again about what we're hoping for, and we'd love to see what you've done so far. So think about that accountability. Couple of things just to kind of be finishing up. I know we're hitting about 3. Please be sure to enter any questions that you have if you need them. All right. Relationships. This is so important. If you have, whether you're using your existing volunteers or you have new volunteers, whether they are virtual or on site, these are relationships you have with people. You want to make sure they are thanked. We want to make sure they have the resources they need. We want to be sure we're available when they have questions. We want to make sure they're accountable, though, and that we're accountable. We want to make sure control is sort of what I mean when we talked about confidentiality, having certain policies and so on. But you want to make sure that you maintain control of your data, of your information that's really important, of your messaging. You want to be sure there aren't people saying all kinds of things because they don't understand the kind of branding, let's say for marketing or communications that you have. And then that software component, again, I'll send you that list. You'll want to take your time deciding on what might work for you. You could send out an email to your existing volunteers and say, hey, we're thinking about using Zoom or GoToWebinar. Do you guys have any opinions? Or put that up on your Facebook page. That's that little crowdsourcing component where you have people provide you with information. That's virtual volunteering for them, really, when you think about that crowdsourcing definition. So these are just a couple of the points in terms of management that I wanted to make sure I shared with you. And, you know, right now, there might be frustrated volunteers, on-site volunteers, because they think that you should still be offering the opportunities that they have, that they have typically had. There might be people frustrated because you should still be open. There might be people frustrated because they want to volunteer virtually and you don't have something available just yet. You know, I just want to encourage you all. You all have decisions that you've made for a reason, you know, and stay hopeful, stay positive, hold your ground on your boundaries as an organization, as volunteer managers. You know, your organization needs to be preserved, needs to grow. You know, maintaining that mission, maintaining your ethics about the work that you do. You know, people are going to press in or push in different ways, but you all are holding your own, and I want to thank you for that. You all are doing what is necessary to serve your clients and your community, and so I hope you just stick with your boundaries. Know that you can say, I'm sorry, but that's not the way that we're doing things right now, and keep those expectations and guidelines and rules, whatever you need to be sure that your organization thrives the way that it needs to thrive and be cared for. Okay, so just thought this was a beautiful picture of what it means for us to be virtually connected, just all over the world. This is an actual picture from NASA. And it shows where there are lights. Obviously, those are where some of the bigger cities are. I'm not sure for which continent this is. I thought that was really amazing. So just a beautiful picture for you all as we're ending. A couple of the great options for free software. I do want to emphasize Marco Polo. That one is great. You can leave video messages for each other, and I do that all the time with my friends. Any of these you may want to think about, especially those first three, with your own family and friends. You know, again, you all need to stay connected and take good care of yourself. The wonderful, wonderful landline is brilliant and can be used. If you have one, picking up that phone and making a call can just be so powerful for an existing volunteer that you've had who you haven't heard from in a while. Just checking in, see how they're doing. And of course, your cell phone. Anyway, thank you all so much. Really take good care of yourselves. And I really appreciate everything that you all do. Did have something quickly about Zoom having some serious security vulnerabilities, and Andrew, you're absolutely right about that. So you do need to vet this software. Again, if you're the IT person, then unfortunately, you know, you'll be the person doing that. If you do have an IT person who can look at other options, or whether Zoom says that some of those security features issues are remedied, then maybe that's something, again, that you can be using. That'll be helpful for you, but I'll make a note of that when I share the resources. So really great point. I had heard about that concern, Andrew. Thanks for sharing that. All right. You all take good care of yourselves. Really thankful for you, as I mentioned. Hopefully this was helpful for you. And again, all that information will be available to you by Monday. So take care.